Can anybody hear us? This documentary is an attempt to find answers for our previously healthy 22-year-old daughter. Please listen and see if you know anyone that can help us, as we are desperate for answers. On October 1st, 2010, our Kara was having a normal day. Then her life changed drastically. While walking to her room, getting ready for school for that evening, her legs and even her stomach began to tingle. Something was not right, but she thought it was from sitting too long, so she started to get in the shower, but her legs felt so weak that she was afraid to get in, so she waited a few moments to see if they would feel better. The idea of getting into the tub and sitting down became an idea to her mind, but as quickly as she thought that, she changed her mind. She decided not to try it for fear that she would not be able to get out, so she attempted to reach her bedroom around the corner instead. As she crossed the threshold, her legs buckled and she fell onto the floor, unable to get up. She could not reach her father or me by phone, so she called her boyfriend. Her boyfriend, along with the help of his father, took her to his home, and I arrived shortly thereafter. She was in a chair and could not move her legs from the waist down. They were cold, numb, and heavy feeling. We assisted her to the car and took her to the emergency room at CMC Northeast in Concord, North Carolina. The ER doctor noticed that her reflexes were not right, and he was concerned about something going on in her spinal cord, so he ordered an MRI. We were relieved when it came back normal, but during the time it took to get this done and read, the reflexes in her feet had vanished, and now there were no deep tendon reflexes below the waist. She was admitted with a diagnosis of Guillain-Barre syndrome. That's an illness usually caused by a recent respiratory or viral illness. She had had a recent stomach virus about 3 weeks prior to the onset of these symptoms. A spinal tap was done, blood work, and more blood work. Then the next day, more MRIs were done. And for the first 3 days, it was one test after another. On the third day, her bladder stopped working. She went 13 hours without urinating, and a scan of the bladder showed that she needed to have a catheter. The catheter was placed, and at the same time her oxygen saturation began to decrease, so she had to have supplemental oxygen placed in her nose. Here is where things get sideways. After the fourth day, we had seen neurologists, hospitalists, general practitioners, and anyone else who would see her. One of the hospitalist neurologists came in and saw her the morning after the bladder and respiratory difficulties and examined her, and then came in again the following day and did the same exam. At this point, all tests were coming up negative. Not one thing was abnormal except a very low vitamin B12. She did another physical exam and checked her reflexes one more time, then took a breath and followed it with this statement: "We can't find what's wrong with you. We're going to take the catheter out of your bladder, the oxygen out of your nose, and move you to a step-down unit. Is anything bothering you at home? Would you like to speak to a psychiatrist?" Because this doctor did not have any medical answers, she obviously assumed that this was all in Kara's mind. But prior to this illness, Kara was a 3-sport athlete in high school. She scored 1,100 career points in basketball and was voted All-State in volleyball. Never once has she had any major physical problems or psychological problems for that matter. But now, because they had no answers, they were minimizing her illness. We were upset and had this neurologist removed from the case. The lead neurologist taking care of Kara seemed to understand our point of view and even appeared supportive and sympathetic. We found out later that this was not the case. He basically agreed with his colleague and gave Kara steroids, as he wrote in her medical record, to make us feel better about things. The medical term for this is empirical. That means to give something that will not cause harm, but not believing that it would do any good either. It was the 8th day and we were ready to go home. She had had a severe headache from her spinal tap and was just on the verge of getting over that, but she still could not walk without major assistance in physical therapy and a walker. The lead neurologist told Kara to go home with therapy, and if she was not walking within 2 to 6 weeks, she might not ever walk again. Strange to say, when he did not even know what was wrong with her. After about 3 weeks, her legs became stronger and stronger, and she was able to walk again, though not as well as before the illness struck. At her follow-up with the neurologist, he informed us that she had an elevated antibody test and that she needed to see a rheumatologist to be evaluated for a syndrome called Sjogren's. She was told that she had this, although she had no classic symptoms of the disorder. She was placed on a medication called Plaquenil, and it made her more ill than she already was. She was unable to eat or sleep without having nightmares. After 3 months, the medication was stopped, and she was told that she indeed did not have Sjogren's. This all took place from December of 2010 until February of 2011. Early in February 2011, Kara was struck with the exact same symptoms after having the flu and fever of 103.9 for 5 days. We again returned to CMC Northeast and waited 5 hours in the ER to see a doctor. This time, a new neurologist was on scene, and she evaluated Kara and seemed generally concerned. However, she saw notes that were written in the last hospital stay that possibly tainted her opinion of Kara's clinical condition. This hospital stay was from the 22nd to the 25th of February. Many of the same things were done: blood work, MRIs, PT. Once again, all tests came back normal, although Kara was anything but normal. We took an outside physician's advice, and upon discharge, we went straight to Duke University Medical Center in Durham, North Carolina, on our own, hoping and praying for an answer of some type. They also thought possible transverse myelitis, but with the negative MRI, they could not give that diagnosis. She was scheduled for more outpatient tests, all with the same outcome. We were again sent home with PT, walkers, wheelchairs, and shower chairs. This time, the leg weakness only lasted 2 weeks. So we were all encouraged and hoped that this was an aftershock from the first event and that we were done with this from here on out. Now from this point on, I'm going to tell you the pattern of her illness to weakness episodes. She got a respiratory illness on March 31st with fever, cough, and congestion. On April 10th, she lost the use of her legs for an additional 3 weeks. Up and going for a short period of time, she then got a bladder infection on May 4th. On May 16th, she again lost the use of her legs, and she was placed on oral steroids for 10 days, which allowed her to walk after being unable to walk for only 3 days. This was a relief, but still no diagnosis. While on the last day of these steroids, she began to have a sore throat and fever on May 26th. Her legs again became weak and useless on June 11th. More steroids were started. 3 days later, she was able to walk again. However, she began to have mouth ulcers and sore throat. She was to go out of town on June 24th, and so we got a prescription of steroids just in case, and as expected, her legs became wobbly and weak, so she had to take the steroids from June the 27th through the end of June. She returned home on July 4th with more mouth ulcers. She thought she had a wisdom tooth coming in and went to see the dentist. There was no incoming tooth, just a large, severe mouth ulcer along with several others in her mouth. As of today, Kara has seen multiple neurologists, 2 rheumatologists, and various primary care physicians, and the result is always the same: no diagnosis, no answers. We've heard everything from multiple sclerosis to Guillain-Barre syndrome to transverse myelitis, even Lyme disease, and the dreaded unknown autoimmune illness. The kicker is that when there is no diagnosis for the physical symptoms, they want to pass it off as psychological. We as her parents, and Kara knows that this is not a psychiatric problem. This is truly a physical illness that is undetermined at this point. Our fear is that the longer it is undiagnosed, the greater the long-term damage. If this story sounds familiar, or if you know of anyone who can help us, please contact us at the following email address that is listed at the end of this video. Any information that you could offer would be helpful. Can anybody hear us? Can anybody help us? We truly hope so.